Good evening, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 229, which is our Restore Britain special. Excuse my boomerisms, folks, needless to say. It's also because I forgot to start our little countdown, but never mind, I'm not going to worry about it now. Being a boomer this morning, even though I got some sleep last night. So anyway, this episode's a special episode, and we're mainly going to be talking about Rupert Lowe's new Restore Britain group. As always, to give people a bit of a chance to join the stream, I am going to start us off with a tune.
Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captives' need. To wait in heavy harness on flooded folk and wall. Your new gods sullen peoples have devil and have child. Take up the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to veil the threat of terror and check the show of pride. By open speech and simple, 100 times made vain, to seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace. Fill full the mouth of famine and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, what's love that heed and folly? Bring all your hopes to naught. Take up the white man's burden, no tawdry rule of kings, but toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. The ports ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go make them with your living and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden and reap his old reward. The blame of those ye better, the hate of those ye guard. The cry of those ye humor are slowly towards the light. Why brought ye us from bondage, our loved Egyptian night? Take up the white man's burden, ye dare not stoop to this, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weariness. By all ye cry or whisper, by all ye leave or do, the silent, sullen people shall wail gods and you. Take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days, the lightly profit laurel, the easy ungrudged praise. Come thou to search your manhood through all of thankless years, no age with dear
That was, of course, the excellent Chris Gard. Please go and check out Chris Gard's YouTube channel if you like good music. Chris Gard is a good Australian man and a father, and he's on our side of the politics. So go and check out Chris Gard's YouTube channel. Good evening to my guests this evening, Adaman, Hitman, and Tharium. How are you going this evening, gents?
Yeah, good.
Surviving.
Well, this evening's show is mostly going to be about Rupert Lowe's new Restore Britain group, which has created quite a stir in right-wing circles over the last week or so. I mean, I'm quite excited by the fact that you've got people as different as the historian David Starkey and the excellent right-wing commentator Morgoth, who are supporting Restore Britain. So I think it's got potential to unite the actual British real right and also social conservatives and what have you. And I like Rupert Lowe. So far, most of the stuff that he has said, I absolutely support myself. I'm actually going to join Restore Britain myself. It's 20 quid a year. And I will put a link after the stream so people can go and join if they want to. And it can't do any harm, in my opinion. I mean, it might not work, of course, but I think we can at least give it a chance. Now, before I ask the other guests on the stream for their opinions on this, our mate AI can't join us this evening, but he did ask me to read a statement of his. So I'm going to do that. And AI said, Restore Britain has a chance to act as a right-wing Fabian society, using its members to produce works and formulate a new society free from the worship of the other, free from the worst aspects of liberalism and post-Christian guilt. What may prevent this necessary revolutionary change in society and within our own group is the Tory centre right, who will stand in the way of saving the country. Susan Hall, for example, demonstrated more anger at the deaths to the IDF than Bob telling the British people to F off. Best wishes, AI. And as I say, that was AI's statement, not mine. But he's a good chap. He's a regular guest on the channel, so I'm quite happy to read his statement out. Does anyone have any comments on what AI said there?
I mean, he is right there. We're getting there will be softer people joining. But in doing that, this is a chance for them to be exposed to sort of the other side of things more than what they probably get in their normal circles. So I think that's quite a good thing. Like Susan Hall, how many people in her circle sort of are saying that, you know, you're not getting your country back is actually a lot worse.
Yes.
But now,
you're right.
She's going to be getting that. You're like, oh, right. I hadn't thought of that. Maybe.
I just think if we could have a group in Britain where the likes of Morgoth and people like Horus and other people who are friends of the channel, you know, if those people, even AI himself, for example, I just think if you had a group in Britain where those sorts of people had genuine input into the group, it would avoid the dangers that AI is talking about of it being corrupted by the conservative liberal centre. But I'm going to throw this open. I've got my own views on this, and I'll spell them out in a bit. But for now, I'd rather hear what the group has to say. And I'm going to ask Adaman first because he's my longest standing friend in this group. So Adaman, go for it, mate. He's been doing this as many years as I have. So
yeah, 299, 229. Bloody hell. I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? Like, if it ends up being another sort of shitbag organisation, you don't want to be giving money to them, but at the same time, it's like 20 quid for a year for your chance at a pretty substantial say in a what could end up being a pretty important organisation. I kind of think it's. I mean, like the thing is, it's not a political party, right? So there's not really many downsides to it existing for us. So it's kind of a win-win. It's just one of those things, get involved, see where it goes, come back and assess in a year's time, I suppose. I'm pretty optimistic about it because Rupert Lowe is probably he's been pretty substantial in terms of certain dialectical capture in the British political space since he was elected. It's also, I think it's there. Obviously there's the thing where it's kind of like him and Ben Habib went their different ways, and I actually think, looking back at that, I think I see that as a more of an endorsement of Rupert Lowe. I mean, I would have joined the Cromwell Club. I'm not sure if I can quite justify the $2,500 a year, so I'm just a standard member. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that seems to be perfectly fair to me, Adam, and I totally agree with you. It not being a political party is an advantage, because it means if you support Reform or UKIP or any of the half dozen little right of centre parties that Britain has, you can still support Restore Britain. And I think that's a potential strength. I've seen one or two people who are always like this on the Reform side of things, poo-pooing it. But those people are always going to be those people, and it is not by any means all of the average supporters. I think many of the average supporters will support Restore Britain. And as you say, it's a chance for people like ourselves to actually have a voice in this, rather than being told, oh, this is just the awful online right or the alt-right or whatever Boomer Farage wants to come out with,
In Indian bots. That's
yeah, Indian bots. That's right. We're Indian bots. That's Farage's other nonsense. I mean, Farage actually called Rupert Lowe a nutter the other day. We were talking about this before we went live, because Rupert Lowe says he wants to deport all illegal immigrants, which to me seems the only sensible policy, because by definition, if you're an illegal immigrant, you're a criminal. You're not supposed to be in Britain. So they should all be deported, no exceptions. Sorry, all of them. And so I think Rupert Lowe, far from being a nutter, is saying the same thing, whereas Nigel Farage is like completely going back on Reform's original promise that they were going to do that themselves.
Well, I mean, it's like you got Trump over in America passing that big, beautiful bill. Now, people will say, oh, well, Trump isn't able to deport every single one, but there's a will, there's the ambition to do it. There's no doubting that Trump actually wants to just deport every illegal that he can find. Whereas you got Tyson, Farage, and Dr. Bull. Do you believe? Do you believe that
they are the lifeblood of our country, though? So,
yeah, sure. I mean, and now we hear that the Reform net zero immigration policy, which, as Tharian was saying before, it's net, so it's not a no immigration policy, but now apparently it's only for 2 years.
Well, this is something Zaya let slip in his trigonometry interview, because he was getting a bit flustered because Konstantin Kisin wasn't buying him. It's his crap. He was like going, you're not really going to do this, are you? And Zaya let slip, well, we'll have net zero immigration for 2 years. Wait, what? Just 2 years? That's not very impressive.
It's nothing. Britain needs that policy for more than a decade, not 2 years.
I mean, we need.
And I don't
zero.
say more than a decade because then it can be extended. But if it's
I mean,
2 years is just not going to do anything basically.
And yeah, that's just net zero. That's not zero. That's net zero.
Whereas
which is
we-
more
we-
higher immigration than what like David Cameron promised in his manifesto, like all those years ago.
yeah, and yet we have Rupert Lowe, who started Restore Britain. We have Rupert Lowe saying, no, Britain actually needs minus immigration for quite a long time. And of course, he's entirely correct. We need
net
less
negative, he
people
said.
coming in than leaving.
Yep.
Because think what that would do for house prices for young people in Britain who want to get married and start a family. Also, what it would do for rental prices. Think what it would do for wages. It would push them up. That would be a terrible thing for real British people, wouldn't it? I mean, all of this stuff would be awful.
The Restore Britain, they've been putting up posts about some policy ideas, and their negative immigration one is the annual departure of illegal immigrants must double. The Boris wave must be reversed and the asylum system abolished. Millions of foreign nationalists who cannot speak English, live in social housing, claim benefits, refuse to work, break our laws, or entirely fail to integrate should go home. For the foreseeable future, significantly more must leave than enter.
Did any of you gentlemen see the recent court case where the bloke got life in prison and the guy is 92? And it's one of the oldest cold cases that's ever been solved in Britain. It goes back to 1967 when I was 2 years old. And this dude in 1967 raped a lady in her 70s, broke into her house, raped her and killed her. And they accidentally found him like 50 odd years later. And he also later on had been convicted for raping other women, by the way. And I just advise people to go and look at thumbnails on YouTube, etc., of this dude. And he's not British, let me tell you.
He'd be if I was Windrush, that guy was. He'd be like about. He's 92 and he's like what 48.
Yep.
Well, yeah. So he would have come over on the Windrush ship or just afterwards.
Yeah, he's not a white Anglo-Saxon or Kelly dude. Let's just put it that way, shall we? We've got to be a bit careful on YouTube, but you know what I mean. But yeah, and so this is the, as you say, Mitch, Windrush, supposedly the generation that created Britain, according to some people on the left. Fucking lies and ridiculous as that is, of course. But
Mithras, he wrote an article saying about how Pakistani rape gangs back in like 1950, back when Clement Attlee was still Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Well, they would have been tiny just because in 1950, I don't think there were 30,000 black or brown people in Britain even. So they would have been very small. But,
I mean, Starmer did his Windrush thing the other day. And it was just, you built modern Britain. Really? What, 300 Jamaicans built modern Britain?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's funny, but even in 1955, which was 10 years after World War II, there were still tiny numbers of immigrants in Britain.
Mm-hmm. And
even under Mrs. Thatcher, Britain was 95% white, I think.
And you think okay, what were they doing? It's like they say, oh, you worked in the NHS and you ran the bus services and stuff. Okay, so you got ordinary jobs, and this is this is rebuilding the country, is it?
Yeah, they were bus drivers or whatever. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Don't forget David Lammy's dad. He was a taxidermist.
Well, that was really
Where would-
useful.
Where would we be without it?
Where would we be
Well,
without
don't you can,
taxidermy? Yes.
Cyber Javid's dad was a bus driver.
Yep.
Yep. Pretty common. My father was a bus driver, but then in World War II, he went across on D+3, and and before that, he'd been in the British Army serving in India. So
Yeah, we had the £10 POM scheme as well at the moment at that time, because we're trying to. Okay, we got a bit too many people to cope with, so we were actually trying to get rid of people, not bring in all of these Jamaicans to fix everything.
Yeah, no, you're entirely correct, of course. Yeah, although it was the Australian government that was paying that. By the way, Australia now, I don't know if this is true. I haven't checked, but I saw on X, on Twitter, that Australia is now only 57% white European.
Yeah,
I think that might be a bit exaggerated, but it's certainly much worse than it was even 25 years ago.
they might mean white British or white British ancestry, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that is possible.
Some other Europeans.
That sounds a bit more reasonable for sure. Yeah, maybe. I don't myself. I mean, all right, I don't see all of Australia. Australia is a continent, it's enormous. But I don't myself see that number of immigrants. But different. I mean, like in all countries, you tend to get immigrant ghettos in various big cities.
Of course, who was it? Someone, I think it was, Kemi Badenoch was proposing that we've got to break up the ghettos and just redistribute them across the entire country.
Yeah, but
I like the ghettos.
But she's an Aruba lady, and she's
I
more
know.
worried about the Igbos than she is anything else. So.
But as bad as these ghettos are, I prefer them being everywhere.
Oh, look, I like I said, I support re-immigration. I've always supported re-immigration. So, all right. Let's get back on.
Well, you have a Boris wave, like the kind of passports that Boris issued. Like those kind of passports literally meant that areas like mine, which were like pretty homogenous up until COVID, just got swamped. So,
and just to add something regarding Emmy's comments about just moving people around, like, what are we, the bloody new Ottoman Empire? Like, because that's what the Ottomans, the Safavids, and other Orient empires used to do. They would just like redistribute various ethnic groups around their empire for different reasons. Like I'm doing a series on modern Iran, and the Safavids constantly moved like different Turkmen or Kizilbash tribes around, and the reason they did it is they wanted to defend their frontiers against other invaders. All right, let's put these rowdy tribesmen in like Khorasan, that will stop the Uzbeks from invading, but it caused problems.
I mean, the Romans did it too.
The Romans did it. Not as much as the Persians, but the Romans did do that to some degree.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's get a bit back on topic, and I don't know. Whoever wants to go next out of Mitch, Hitman, or Tharian, what's your take on Rupert Lowe's Restore Britain?
I've seen some people say, "Oh, it's like another pressure group," but this one really has exploded in a way all the others haven't. Because in just a few days, they've got 111,000 Twitter followers. Compared like Ben's GB pack, which is also free. That launched in September, and that's only at 19,000. So it does seem to have a lot more momentum behind it than all these other sort of groups have.
I think it's an advantage. It's not a political party, as Atterman was saying. I think that's a good thing. I must ask Atterman, by the way. Atterman, what's your avatar, mate? I don't recognize it.
It's I think it's supposed to be FC Fuller in his younger years.
Oh, okay, cool.
Oh, wow.
His pre-boarding years.
Wow, that's some. Yeah, I covered him on my channel, Atterman, talking about his conduct of war and the Principles of Warfare.
Excellent British military theorist. Really good guy. So yeah,
Yeah,
thanks
interesting
for that.
character.
Yeah, listen, the sort of person I would quite happily do a stream on, because although what was his name? There was another guy who tried to usurp him in the 30s and after the war, and quite dishonestly in many respects. Like if you read people like Heinz Guderian, Panzer General, it was Fuller that influenced those guys, but not the other bloke whose name escapes me at the moment.
Little Heart, I think.
Little Heart, thank you very much for that. Yeah, exactly. Little Heart tried to claim some of the credit
all
for
him.
that.
Yeah.
But actually, it was Fuller that was the guy who was the big tank theorist and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, true story. But yeah, you were saying, Thurring, please carry on.
Yeah. There just seems to be a lot of momentum behind this, more so than others, which is just more interesting. And then his sort of plans that this could maybe become a political party or not, or take one over. We'll see. And then they've been because they've also been putting out, like I said, I did the one on the net negative immigration. They've just been putting out these policy ideas, and they've all been absolute bangers. There's restore the death penalty.
Yep.
Brilliant. And none of our politicians want to go anywhere near that. But you got Rupert here, going, actually, a lot of the public would support it, especially if you ask it. I think if you just ask straight out, should the death penalty be brought back? I think it's about 50%. Then if you add on things for death penalty for murderers and stuff, for child rapists, it all.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Pakistani rape gangs that killed little girls. That Axel Rudy Cabana scum.
Once you start
the asshole who blew up Manchester Arena, why should we be paying 50,000 quid a year to keep them in prison?
Yeah, no. Japan still hangs people. They don't.
Yes,
they don't have the sort of, because I don't like the lethal injection. It's just the modern state, really, isn't it? Hanging is more. I don't know. It feels more justice in hanging.
Listen, if you're going to bring it back, and I do support bringing it back for the worst crimes, what you've got to do is you've really got to make sure you have a proper appeal process, because it would be vile for people to be hung who were not really guilty, and that has happened.
I think,
but you can do that. You can have a reasonable appeal process.
Also, I think if it came back, you would limit it to the cases where we do know 100%, which we can know. We can get people on Visio, get them caught in the act, doing it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that Axel Rudy Cabana did kill those 3 tiny little girls. Yes.
Or the Lee Rigby murderers and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no doubt here. So yeah.
This is the only time where I've ever actually had, when I've brought this conversation up with people, the only time I've ever actually had pushback, it was always, but what if you get the wrong guy? And I would just say, well, you could just use it in cases where there was no doubt. And
if you're caught literally red-handed, like the cases we're talking about here, you're caught literally red-handed. Well, there's no doubt. 100%, Alan. I totally agree with you, mate. In those cases, I would totally support it, because there's there's no doubt that Axel Rudy Cabana did what he did. There's no doubt that the guys who slaughtered Lee Rigby did what they did. The
Manchester Arena bomber.
Yeah, Manchester Arena bomber is another good case. There's no doubt in these cases, so you're not risking anything in terms of justice.
Another one of their policies, very good. An Englishman's home is his castle. It's talking about how we should be able to use lethal force to defend ourselves in our homes without fear of being arrested, as is the usual case.
100%.
Because there have been people have had to do this. Like I remember a few years ago, an old man used a screwdriver, fight off a couple of attackers, and one died, got arrested. Luckily, though, got picked up in the press, and sort of that's the only way you're getting off, really, because the public are very much in support of anyone who does this. So you got to hope that at the moment you've got to hope that they sort of get sort of well known.
But yeah, it's a good policy. It should be the policy that if you're defending your own home and your own family, you should absolutely be able to use lethal force to do so.
Even in the United States, it varies from state to state, but some states have a duty to retreat law. So even if you're in your own home, someone's attacking you, you still got to just run away.
Which is ridiculous.
Actually,
and imagine if you're a dad and a husband, and your wife and your children are there, you're going to run away. Of course you're not.
Yeah, there was actually a case near me of a guy who, a man who was, I think his daughter's ex-boyfriend, was drunk, and he was going on a bit of a rage, and he climbed onto the scaffolding on the outside of the house and was trying to break him through the window. And the dad kept shouting at him to leave, and then in the end the dad fired through the window with his shotgun. And he went to the guy survived, but the father still went away to prison for quite a few years for that.
How ridiculous! How ridiculous.
But of course the thing is actually like, this kind of goes into a lot of other issues we have in this country, but like our self-defense laws on paper, as they were written and practiced back in the day, are not that bad. But the issue is that they rest on the idea of what's reasonable in the public eye. And of course, the problem is that when they're assembling juries now, they're going through people's social media pages and stuff like that, and they're trying to whittle down the jury to the most milk toast, sort of lame bunch they can get. And of course, to those people, I remember there was an incident in Canterbury actually some years ago where a Polish guy was seen outside, I think it was the Morrisons, with what they thought was a rifle, and the armed police came down there, and there was a little bit of like a standoff that was heavily compounded by the fact that I think this guy was not mentally very well, and also there was a language barrier. And in the end, I think the police did shoot him like just once, and essentially then got the rifle off him and detained him. And that, I think it might have been an air rifle in the end. But I remember like people saying to me that, they shouldn't have done that. They should have like shot the gun out of his hand. Like
these are people who have never fired a gun. I see, but okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like so many people in our society, like they're just movie bugged when it comes to how violence works. They don't really have a particularly good concept of how sort of fighting and that takes place. So you end up with these instances where like someone will attack someone in the street, and the person who was attacked sort of knocks the person back, and they've got all the adrenaline's firing, they're going for it, and they kick the guy a few times while he's on the ground, and that's now seen as as going beyond what's considered reasonable force, because most of the people in those juries and the like just have no concept of they have no concept of what that sort of situation does to you.
Never been in a fight. I mean, honestly, in the 19th century, you used to get this, Englishmen don't kick people when they're down and all that. You're doing a street fight, guys. I'm sorry, but you do. Street fights don't have rules.
So, ING, you're telling me that, life with a gun, it's not like playing Fallout 3 and you get your backside. If I target their right arm, it will cripple it, and then they can't shoot, right? That's how it works.
Yeah. I mean, just for anyone who's interested, aim for the main body of the enemy. That's about as close as you're going to get. They're moving. They're not trying to be hit. Or whatever. But defending your home as your castle. Traditionally, an English and British person's home is their castle. And yeah, I absolutely support the idea that you can use reasonable force to defend it.
Yeah. I was going to say, there's standards applied to our armed response police is absolutely insane. They've got to account and justify every single bullet. And
Yeah.
like with the Chris Cabba guy, who was trying to run them over. So it was only one shot and killed him. And like Anjuk was saying, one bullet, often like these are just 9mm as well. That probably isn't going to put him down. Unlike the US police, they'll just mag dump you because they're not going to risk their life to keep some.
Well, it's what you do. You keep firing until the enemy isn't a threat anymore. That's what you do.
Yeah,
if you have to open fire, you don't. If you have to open fire, I mean, I'm talking if you're like a cop or a soldier or something like that. If you have to open fire, you keep firing until the enemy's not a threat anymore. And if you don't do that, you're probably going to get killed, or your mates are going to get killed.
Yeah, I believe the armed response police are having a real problem getting people to join. Because why would
blame them?
You do your job, they're just going to try and arrest you. What's the point?
Can I just say to Interlocator 67, I put his thing up on the chat. Your parents and grandparents should have supported the National Front when they had the chance. How do you know they didn't, mate? How do you know they didn't? So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with those sorts of issues is it's like a matter of hindsight. Like I'll speak to people who I've had a hand in red pilling, like in the last sort of 10 years, and they'll talk with like really extreme levels of frustration about their co-workers, and they'll get to the point where they're like slagging them off, and I'm like, well, hang on a minute, dude, you were there once too. Like, you know, it is frustrating, but you know, people believe and do the things that they do for certain reasons, usually for matters of, you know, staying within the tribe, staying in their social at their social level at the very least, or prestige and stuff like that. It's not everyone is just as autistic as most people on the right and just go down things through purely logical you know, justifications.
Yeah, I'd say like
Farian, what other policies can you recall? Because I remember there was at least about a half dozen.
Yeah, I was just gonna finish that one. Yeah, I'd say generally sort of our circles are. I mean, I believe we're a bit of ahead of the curve on a lot of these things, and I think it's important just to act with grace always when people do come around to our side. You know, you never want to rub it in people's faces, like you're saying about your coworker. Yeah. You know, just like, you know, welcome aboard. That's the way to behave, really.
I get where Atman is coming from, though, because some of these people they stick to these stupid ideas for so long.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, you have to realize at some point that if you keep doing the same thing and it keeps failing, you're the problem, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I see what both of you are saying. I'm adamant, carry on, mate.
What was I going to say? Yeah, carry on. I've lost my train of thought.
Some of the other policies, end school holiday fines. So you're currently only allowed 5 days a year to take your kids out of school, otherwise you get fined.
Oh, for God's sake, that's a new one I'd never heard of. Jeez.
Yeah, they've had that for around a while.
Yeah. So they want to end that because they say parents should be trusted to act in the interests of their own children. Yes. 5 days a year will not ruin their education, but it will give children irreplaceable life experiences that cannot be gained in the classroom.
Yeah, I mean, to me, none of that should apply. I mean, I don't think there should even be a limit, frankly.
No, and especially when you look at the state of education these days, when a lot of kids are going to school or finishing school, and they don't even have basic literacy. They can't count. So, like, this school, all this time in school isn't doing anything for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually what
people.
moved the needle. That moved the needle for me on this subject. I used to be a bit on the fence about it because I used to think, well, you know, a lot of those parents that are taking like my mother was a forensic scientist, right? But she was really into her history. So when we went on holiday to go to, let's say, Malta, it was to see the World War II tunnels, right? or to go and see things like that. So for me, time spent out of school on holiday, because it was always in school time because we weren't particularly very, very well off. And holidays outside of school time are immensely, much more expensive. So for me, time spent on holiday was usually more productive times of learning than time spent in school. But I used to also sit there and think, well, it probably isn't the same for other people that are just like going to a holiday resort in Spain. But now you kind of look at it and think, well, not sounding funny, you could take 2 months out of the school year and it wouldn't have that great of an impact on your education because of the state of the schools now. So yeah,
well, I've spoken to you young guys, like I've spoken to relatively young guys like Adam and actual young guys like Mitch, and what you're learning in school is probably not worth learning half the time these days anyway.
But that's why they're finding the parents, because obviously they want you to maximize the indoctrination in the school, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll just take my kids out for the month that we're learning about the 300 genders. How about that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're going on holiday for June. No reason given.
Yeah.
I used to do what Ammon was saying, like with my little boy when he was young. I mean, my little boy's now a very grown-up man, but when he was a little boy, I used to do exactly the same. Because when I went on holiday, I'd go and visit local castles and old churches and interesting historical stuff, just because it interested me, and so therefore I took my son there.
And like history education in school is abysmal.
I remember standing with my little boy when he was about 4, and we went to Bristol for a weekend, and I took him on the SS Great Britain, the Brunel ship that is preserved there. And he's standing on the deck, and he's 4 years old, of course, and he's going, Daddy, it's a pirate ship, it's a pirate ship. And I did the same thing with HMS Victory and HMS Belfast and what have you, So to me, that's the sort of stuff you should be learning in school anyway. So, whatever.
When I hopefully have children, it is a big consideration for me at the moment. Like, if it was feasible for me and their mother, if we could homeschool them, because of just how low my opinion of the public school system is.
But as Hitman was saying, it's basically indoctrination for the most part these days.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've been working with a young lad who's like a recent school leaver, and he took, because of course they have to do like A levels now. He took history at his A level, and he's quite into it. And like where we live in East Kent, you've got like historic Chatham dockyards up the road. We've got a Roman history museum that's not far from here, and he'd never. And I went to these places as school trips that he never did. He was in school. He was in what is he? Over 15 years younger than me. He's never been to any of these places on school trips, even when he took history as an A level. It's pretty shocking. Yeah, just how poor a quality it is now. Even I noticed that at his recent big talk that he did up in Oxford, Dominic Cummings actually, where he used to talk about like doing this and that within the political system to enact change, he seems to have now gone down like the same arc that like Curtis Yarvin did in in the sort of early 2010s, late noughties, where he's now just saying, oh, there's actually no chance within the system. And the thing he actually advocates for now, it seems to, is building new educational institutions for our kids in the future, essentially, which I thought was quite dark that even he's come to that realization, but also
parallel institutions, Alan,
yeah.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Ataman, because I've recently been reading Jean Baudrillard for the first time, his Simulacra and Simulation, and there's a chapter in there where he's talking about education, and he wrote that in 1981, but he's talking about the student protests in France in 1968, and he was even saying as far back as then, oh yeah, degrees are worthless, universities are worthless, and it's like, bloody hell, you're saying it as far back as then.
Yeah. Oh, good God. Yeah, I think me and a certain old friend of the channel a long time ago, we did a reading of, I can't remember the guy's name. It was the guy that popularized what we later on memed as the 37 words that they used in that film, Four Feathers. And he was talking in, I think it was like 1905 or something, to the Women's Institute or something along those lines about boys' education. And even then he was starting to say, oh, there's a serious decline going on. If only you could see it now.
Oh, look, average British IQs have actually declined since 1900. So, I mean, and
it's
some
gone
of
down
that,
like 8
of
IQ
course,
points,
is
isn't it?
yeah, and some of that is to do with mass immigration, obviously. But you have to think that some of it is also, I mean, I think IQ is more genetic than it is
seems to be
factors of like growing up, but you can certainly improve it a bit by factors growing up. And so I think it's a combination of mass immigration, like a much larger percentage of the British population is not Anglo-Celtic anymore, not white anymore, if you want to really be simple. And also, of course, the education system itself is now shit. I mean, when I went to school, and I was born in 1965. We still had ex-World War II guys as our teachers. I remember we had, like, one of my favorite teachers, who was an art teacher actually, was he did art and history. This was at primary school, and he was a merchant navy guy, and he was what they called a Sparks, which was a radio operator in World War II. He'd been sunk twice. Really interesting dude. Like, he'd been sunk once in the Atlantic and once in the Mediterranean, and a really interesting dude. But he didn't stand any bullshit in his class. If you started talking in his class, you got one of those big, heavy wooden blackboard rubbers chucked straight at you.
I had a teacher who he'd always say to us how he longed to go back to the day when he could still throw them at us.
I went to school when they still could, and they did.
Yeah.
And but you know what? You sat there and you listened and you learned. Because you didn't have any fucking choice, Even if you were the worst boy in the class, you never had any choice. You had to sit there and listen and learn. And I was never, by any means, the worst boy in the class. But, some teachers, like this guy, was a good teacher. He was interesting, and he would have interesting stories because he'd had life experiences that were quite interesting, And as a boy, particularly, you could look at him and you could think, yeah, he's a pretty good man. He's been through a few things,
Do you think returning that we should have all schools be gender segregated again?
Well, my primary school wasn't.
Yeah, primary schools might be, but secondary schools.
I don't think you need to segregate them as primary schools.
No.
There's something to be said for segregating secondary schools because boys learn differently to girls.
I mean, if you do it for both boys and girls, they learn better in segregated spaces.
Yes, because boys need a different method of teaching than girls do,
Yeah.
for sure. Whereas what we've done today, of course, is we've just made all teaching designed for girls and fuck boys, basically.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, we're going off the subject a bit. Do you remember any of the other restore
there's
policies?
The free political prisoners, mainly sort of addressing the Lucy Connolly stuff, which is obviously in how, like, you know, paedophiles get lesser sentences than she does. Okay. Obviously, like.
Oh, on that note, Thariam, I'm going to interrupt you for a minute because there was a case that was coming up on X, on Twitter today, which was a Scottish lady in her early 30s who was heavily pregnant, and she ordered Deliveroo or one of these things, and the Muslim dude who turned up raped her so hard that her baby was aborted.
Jeez.
And do you know what he got? Do you know what he got?
Oh, I dread to think.
12 months. 12 months.
Wow.
And Lucy Connolly, and I don't particularly like Lucy Connolly, by the way, but she got what was it, 3 years for a tweet?
Three and a half, I think. Yeah.
For a tweet, and you can rape a pregnant woman so hard you abort her baby and only get 12 months. I mean, come on, something is wrong here, people.
I'm guessing no murder charge was thrown onto that, was there?
Well, obviously not, because these people, the same people that support judges like this, also want to be able to abort babies up to the day of delivery. So, I mean, why would they ever make that a murder charge? You know?
Yeah.
But I mean, the thing is, the amount of times where I've had arguments with these people about the Lucy Connolly thing, and they're trying to go, "Oh, you know, it's illegal. It's illegal for a reason." It's like, okay, I mean, lots of things are illegal. It doesn't mean they're for good reasons. But like the really obscene thing about this is it kind of. I mean, this is why we should actually probably have quite a lot of hope, is because, like, a lot of the people that sort of rule over us are just like they're so they feel so backed into the corner that they will do such insane stuff like this. Like the amount of people I've said to them, I said, look, it doesn't matter whether you think she should or shouldn't have said it. Like, you're going to be wearing this for, like, you know, the rest of at least this political cycle, because every single time a judge lets someone off with this or a judge lets someone off with that, someone's going to bring up the Lucy Connolly thing. Yeah, and it's gonna stay in the public consciousness. It's going to keep coming up over and over and over again. And the very arguments that they're running around trying to claim aren't true, like two-tier policing and two-tier justice and the rest of it, are just gonna stay there, you know, forever in the front of people's minds every time this is brought up. You know, invariably they always come up with some cope where they're like, well, I think that those punishments are too light. It's like, okay, but I don't see you talking about it, except in the instance when Lucy Connolly's brought up and you have to answer for this shit. You know,
the poor dude after Southport who was sent to prison and killed himself in prison. Another example. Yeah,
another one. Yeah, he doesn't get mentioned as much, but yeah, that's another issue.
It is good that we have Lucy Connolly in the public zeitgeist, because she's just one of many who have been arrested for nonsense, and it's good that, you know, one of them is finally got some public attention.
I was on the stream we did, I think it was last week, when Aubrey Alley was on, and Aubrey Alley, of course, is an American girl, and a good American girl, by the way. But she just could not understand the lack of free speech in Britain.
Yeah,
like, because in America you have you know, the amendments to the Constitution that guarantee free speech, and she just couldn't grasp how Britain, in effect, has no free speech at all these days.
When we started,
if you're on the wrong side of the political spectrum, you can, like, if you're a left winger, You
No.
can say you can go on stage and say you want your country back. Fuck you, as a
Well,
black guy, and you can just get away with that. But
Wait.
if you're a white dude, no, not a chance.
You see the kneecap guys, even them saying kill your local MP, that they got let off with that, which is
Of course.
that's mad. Like any sort of vaguely right wing.
Imagine if one
said
of
that.
us had said that.
Oh,
If one
yeah,
of us had said that. I mean, not
on a
that we
bit-
ever would, but
No.
if we did.
and not just on a little
we
YouTube
would have been
stream.
banned, we would have been
Yeah.
arrested, that would have been it,
And
well,
even
speaking
I was going to say even the IDF stuff, he got off with that. Which like obviously, like you don't get your country back. Who cares about that? But they even let him off for the kill the IDF stuff.
Except I don't give a shit about the IDF.
No,
stuff
neither do
'cause
I.
they're not
Neither do I.
British,
But the machine does more. But even that, like where he's
But that was the main
we
thing
can't
people
punish him for
pulled
anything,
him up
yeah.
for.
Yeah.
It was revealing that the centre, the supposed centre right, which is actually the centre left, of course. That was the main thing they spoke about. They didn't give a shit about, you're never getting your country back. Fuck off. They didn't.
Well, they
care
almost
about
used
that.
that as a way of distracting from the other things he'd said,
Mhm.
like making an outrage out of that to get away from the other comments. I mean, obviously, like I know you talked about it last week, and we didn't exactly want to give too much credence to it, but like that character, he's I mean, he was a bit of a nobody. He was essentially given this huge
complete nobody.
opportunity, largely, let's be honest, because he's like anti-white, anti-English, piece of shit. And it's sort of backfired on him in a minor way, but I suppose no one really holds him responsible because they know he is just kind of a nobody that was put up there for this one specific reason.
It was planned.
And
I mean, it was obviously planned out. It wasn't accidental.
But it is. I mean, even there's like, funny enough, I think that they've taken a bit more of an L on this than most people have even realised, because I looked at the Metro, the newspaper, because obviously they're middle class sort of London outlets, so they're sort of, they talk about Glastonbury a lot, even though it's not within their remit, but whatever. And they had they did articles like one day after the other, and the first one was like, this guy takes to the stage with powerful message and captivates the audience. And then when it all kind of backfired on them, like the next day, they're just like, it doesn't matter that he said this stuff because actually no one cared, no one knew who he was, and no one would listen to it. And they got these weird made up quotes where they're going like, some guy said Bob who before doing a line of Ket, and I'm like, no one talks about like, no one talks about these sort of things in this sort of manner around substances like that. But whatever.
Has any of you guys ever been to Glastonbury? Because I haven't.
Oh no.
No.
Nope.
I'll be honest, I'm not.
My younger brother went. My younger brother went, and it didn't do him a lot of good. Let's just say that. But I've never been there. Never wanted to go there. It's weird to me,
I mean, I live in Kent, so we have a lot of. We will get a lot of in the summer like beer festivals and stuff like that. And I've been to a few, and it's good fun. I mean, this isn't a beer festival, obviously, but yeah, I think back in the day when they got some genuinely good acts on, it was probably a bit of fun, But I mean, here's the other thing as well, like the difference between like you have this Bob character the previous day doing all this stuff, and then all these various other shit acts doing all this stuff, and then the next day you get Rod Stewart come out and there's like Union flags everywhere, and everyone's having a great time, and it's kind of like Glastonbury of the 90s again. It is a bit weird. I do generally think when Metro did the Cope article saying no one cared, I think that was actually probably closer to the reality. I generally think that most of the people there don't really get pulled in by the political messaging that much, because they're probably high and or pissed at, when it's going on. So it's I don't know. It's I'll say it's especially gay and especially black in recent years, and that probably drags down the vibe somewhat. I would say.
Pretty much the same thing, though. You know, being especially gay and especially black amounts to the same thing these days. But yeah, no, I don't disagree with any of that. I want to ask Mitch what he thinks about Restore Britain, but I'm not sure if he's back yet, because I know he had to leave his keyboard for a while. So
I still haven't, because I said on like I would stream the other night. Like, I still haven't made my mind as to whether I'm joining, because I'm like 90% sure it's a good thing, because it's like Rupert Lowe. Yeah, I think he's probably the only MP I can actually trust. I was happy for.
I was going to say that's something some people were up. Can we trust these people? And I mean, with anything, that's just going to be how you feel about it, isn't it?
Yeah,
just vibes, really. And like Rupert gives, I get good vibes from Rupert that I don't from the rest of Reform anymore. Like the rest of Reform, I just like come across like used car salesmen, just covered in slime, which is why I've gone off.
Yeah. Listen, I'm gonna join Restore Britain. It's 20 quid. It's worth 20 quid. It's for a whole year. So yeah, I'm gonna join it. I am not a joiner, in case you guys have not noticed this. Like I never joined Reform. Even though I wanted Reform to be good, but they're not. And I'm sorry, the continued presence of Zia Youssef makes them not good. And if that makes me a racist, okay, I'm a racist. But,
so another thing Restore put out was banning the burqa.
Again, I support this. I see the reasons why some people don't, because they say it like it makes them integrate more. I don't look at it like this. What I look at, when you look at banning the burqa, or another policy that I think Restore Britain have, and certainly Rupert Lowe supports, is banning halal and kosher slaughter. And I support both of those things, because to me, if you want to reduce immigration and you want to increase remigration, and I do, you make it more difficult to be an immigrant in Britain, and both of those things would do that.
Without screen, I'm sharing.
Is this Nigel one?
I can't see it at the moment.
Is this Nigel saying?
Oh yes, I can. I'm sorry. Now I can see it. Wait a minute, mate. Here we go. Yep, there you go. I'm going to.
Does he agree with non-stunned meat such as kosher and halal?
I don't like it.
Should it be banned?
I don't like it.
Should we only do it the traditional fashion in this country?
Do you know what, Nick? I think we've got to
stop it a minute, please. Can you stop it a minute, guys? Sorry, have to stop that, because if we don't, we'll get a copyright strike from LBC. But yeah, I'll play the rest of it in a minute, Mitch. It's like I just am well aware of how you get copyright strikes on YouTube, and I don't want one on my channel. So yeah, we have to comment on this, because that way it's fair use. So the point I'm trying to make is Woodpit 420 is very accurate. My view on halal and kosher slaughter is it is cruelty to animals, and Britain was the first country in the whole world to have strong animal welfare laws that came in the 19th century. We were the first country in the world to do that, and part of my absolute anti-halal and kosher slaughter is that it's cruel to animals. I'm sorry, and British people are not cruel to animals. We haven't been for many hundreds of years. Britain is a nation of animal lovers. So that's part of it. But it's the same with like banning the hijab and all these other Muslim costumes for women. I also support them because they're going to make more. They're going to make less of these people want to move to Britain, and they're going to make some of these people want to move out of Britain. Both of which, to me, are entirely good things.
And it doesn't cost anything. It's not
Yeah,
like
it doesn't cost us anything.
Like actual deportation efforts are tricky. This is
no. Yeah, this doesn't cost us a penny, and also it's an absolutely traditional British policy that you could show to the likes of Queen Victoria or Lord Salisbury in 1898, and they both would turn around and say, "Yeah, we'll support that. Absolutely, we will," because that's what Britain was doing.
It is a bit sad though, because it kind of shows that that we've kind of crossed a bridge or a line in the sand. Because you know, I mean, like sometimes you get these instances where they'll be talking about like some old classical English literature, and they'll go, "Oh, they described this man as dark. That must mean he was black." And of course, like, oh, but they didn't explicitly say this character. Yeah, they didn't explicitly say this character was white, so he could have been any race. And it's like, yeah, they didn't have to say anyone was anything because it was understood that everyone was English.
Yes, absolutely. Well, everyone was British, at least. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's like, it's like, you know, now we're having to stare down like the idea of having like explicit race laws. So like, even if we get rid of these people, you know, you're going to have this sort of, I suppose, reminder that this place was sort of stained for a while, and that we have to continue to think of ourselves as a sort of racial group where that was previously unnecessary because we were just us in our particular time and place.
100. Yeah, 100. Like, you know, people used to talk about dark Welshmen, for example, and no one thought that was a black Welshman. They just thought it was a dark-haired Welshman. You know, that's all.
Like Catherine Zeta-Jones, basically.
Yeah.
Who looks a little bit Mediterranean, but she's absolutely a Welsh girl, you know.
I first saw her in the Zorro movie, and for ages I thought she was Italian or something, or Spanish.
No, there's a fair number of people.
Tom Jones as well, have a dark Welshman.
Yeah. Or you know, people used to talk about ginger and blonde Scottish people, you know. But no one assumed that you were different. You, as Arman said, these were all British people, and everyone knew they were all British people. And calling someone like a dark Welshman or a dark Cornishman or something like that didn't mean they were black.
Yeah, it's
and
like
no one thought it did.
Yeah, it's like a black prince. It's like the Black Prince who essentially he had dark hair and dark eyes, I believe. Like he had dark curly hair or something like that. I mean, it's like my granddad had dark curly hair and had slightly swarth skin to a point where he was mistaken for Sicilian when he was stationed there during the war, with the invasion of Sicily. And some jokes used to joke and call him like Italian names like Giuseppe, but no one doubted that the guy was an Englishman because you only had to listen to the guy's accent, and and it's like
100%. Let's play the rest of this Nigel Farage clip now, guys.
Of these communities is such that it's really quite difficult to do. We could ban it, but we would, if we were to ban it, we would bring this to the centre of national political debate for a very considerable period of time, with strong opinions on both sides, and that's fine. But I'm going to argue we've got more important, more urgent priorities.
Yeah. The size of these communities is so big, we couldn't possibly dream of doing this anymore.
And the more you put this off, Mr. Nigel Farage, the more you put this off, the bigger these communities are going to get, and the more difficult it will be to do. And if you're a real British person, you want them gone. I'm sorry.
Well, I feel like Nigel...
Sorry, carry on.
I was going to say, I feel like his opinion, and someone like Bradford, is if he can just get the Palestinian flags taken down, put up a few Union Jacks instead. Job done. Country saved.
But yeah, it's like, I suppose. I mean, if you want to, if you know, we kind of accept that you do have to cross this line, and we do just have to move into a more racialized future to fix this problem. Like, maybe not to get too dark, but maybe banning this and perhaps coaxing a reaction out of, you know, sort of sub 90 IQ subcontinentals is probably not a bad idea to facilitate more power for your political party that's presumably now in a place of authority to do something with it.
Because you know they're going to kick off.
Yeah,
because of course they would.
Yeah, I mean that's a rather dark thing to pass, because of course you're implying that you know, you're almost kind of wishing for harm at that point, which is not something you should be doing. But yeah, it's also not incumbent on us to be responsible for their actions. So
the Muslim Council of Britain have said that banning halal would cause a large amount of Muslims to leave.
Good.
Oh no.
Good. And if they do kick off, they're going against British laws, and we can kick them out. Good. As Herman said, it's not our responsibility to be responsible for their reactions. It's not. I'm sorry. It really isn't. I just want to say to Count Duckegg, who thought the Austrian painter was the first to introduce animal welfare laws. No, mate, you are wrong by about 40 or 50 years. Britain started introducing animal welfare laws in the late 19th century. We were easily the first country to do it, just as we were the first country to introduce laws against slavery. So, yeah.
And environmental policy. I quite like that Roger Scruton book, Green Philosophy. He goes into the Angling Association bringing about some of the earliest, like, proper environmental policy.
True. Very true. Yeah. I mean, if you look at most of the best things in the world, they're mostly British, to be honest. But, yeah.
Well, regarding animal welfare, I'm sorry to bring things down, but I don't know if any of you saw this, but I saw a pretty egregious thing on X regarding animal welfare, which just all I'd say is man-made horrors beyond our comprehension. But I'm not sure if this is here, but this is definitely in America. Some of these pharmaceutical companies who produce estrogen for male to female transgenders, you wonder how they farm it. They farm it from pregnant horses, which they have on like this battery. And what's worse is, to ensure the horses are perpetually producing enough estrogen, they impregnate the horses, but then when they're about to give birth, they terminate the pregnancy and then force them into a state of pregnancy again. So they're like constantly in this state. And it's just what the fuck?
Just vile, Hitman. I know my friend Aubrey Alley, who's an American girl who loves horses, would like that would make her angry for sure.
That was another one of the restore things, that sex is biological, because obviously.
Just fucking vile. Hitman, listen, I hesitate to say you're one of the most right-wing amongst us, because I think we're all pretty right-wing. I think we're all pretty right-wing. What's your take? I know you were very dubious about reform right from the start. What's your take on Restore Britain?
Well, much more positive, and it's mainly because it's led by Rupert Lowe, and I think he's really carried himself very well since he was kicked out of Reform, and is proving to be much more of a promising leader than Farage's. So, yeah, I'm all for it. I think the decision to be a movement rather than a party is smart, because again, you kind of circumnavigate the whole, party problem, and again, you can influence things. And Yeah, I think what's also promising is because he got Charlie Downs there as a kind of powerful sort of media influencer, and also someone who's quite young. It also, I think, shows that it's not just some boomer project for older people. I'm investing in the future.
I like Charlie Downs. I like the fact he's a young dude. I think he's engaged, but he ain't married. Yeah, absolutely, and I agree with that.
When I first saw him on the Lotus Eaters, I wasn't too impressed, but he seems to have come into his own more as he's sort of got the hang of it. He seems like a decent guy, yeah.
Well, on the interview with sorry,
you carry on,
man. Yeah, carry on.
So you said you've met him?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay. Well, what was interesting, because on the interview AA did with him, he came across really well and serious. And one thing I liked was that he mentioned that he'd read Carlyle's On Heroes, and I'm like, wow, he actually does reading. He's not just like a media personality.
Yeah. He's. I think he's doing quite good. Seems good.
He was when I met him. He was talking about joining the army, and he was like he said something, I can't remember exactly what it was, but he said something like, "How can I like soothe my warrior soul without fighting for the gay?"
He had a good point, and I've got to say, I mean, I perfectly understand the desire of young men to be in the military or the Navy or the Air Force or something like that. I perfectly understand that. I had it when I was a young boy, but it's difficult to do now because do you really want to fight for Keir Starmer, two-tier care? Do you really? Because, and let me tell you, like, my son's in the Royal Navy, and I've told him many times, where are you, son? I'd leave. And he won't because, sons don't do what their dads want, as all of you chaps will probably know, and you've probably been in that position. But, I understand guys who want to do it. And I actually think it's a good thing. If we had a healthy society, thinking to yourself, I'll spend 3 years in the army or the Royal Navy or the Royal Air Force would be a good thing. But at the moment, it ain't, because the people who control those armed forces want us to fight people who ain't our enemies, and they want us to allow our enemies to completely take over our country.
Yeah, sometimes I kind of if we're ever talking about, like, if people are talking about, there's going to be a draft to go fight the Russians or whatever, people always expect me to say I'd be against it, but I often kind of slightly take the piss, but also being slightly serious, say no, I'll go and do it. I mean, how many other opportunities are you going to get in the modern world for the regime to give you, like, combat training and weapons training and put you into a trench where you can build some modern camaraderie?
I see where you're coming from. Sorry.
During the Southport riots, there were people going, like, asking Starmer to send in the military, but the fighting lads are still overwhelmingly white working class lads.
Yes.
And you're telling them, all right, now go beat up your family and friends. Are you sure? Is Keir Starmer sure he can rely on them to do that?
Look, I've had this argument many times on this channel, Tharian, before you became a member. And I think the lower down the ranks you go, the less chance that Starmer's view will prevail. I think there are a great many. I think there are a lot of captains. I think there are a great many lieutenants and second lieutenants who would not order people to fire on real Anglo-Celtic British people. I think the majority of NCOs would not, and the majority of privates would not be at all keen. I think that's one of the reasons the British government doesn't do this. is that they realize that at the company level, which is what you actually use in that situation. No, most of the military guys are just not going to do it. I mean, my son has told me, he's an officer in the Royal Navy. He has told me that if he was ordered to open fire on protesters who were real Anglo-Celtic British people, he just wouldn't do it.
Yeah, so this is what happened.
His sailors wouldn't want him to either. So so that is 100% true. But then you can watch the video that was on X on Twitter earlier this week, where there's some little thought of a woman who's probably in her 40s, who apparently is a British general. I mean, if she's a general, then I'm a Zulu, but whatever. And I'm probably more of a Zulu than she is a general, to be honest, given I had soldiers who were related to the Zulus. But you have to look at this, and you have to see that everybody over the rank of lieutenant colonel is basically a lefty politician bastard. I mean, there might be one or two who are hiding their power levels, but it ain't many. It's not.
Yeah, I was going to say
many.
I was going to say, with Spain, that's pretty much what happened with Civil War. You had most of the top generals who were on the side of the Republic, but then from the NCOs downward, everyone was on Franco's side.
Yeah, it's very similar to that. You've got to be very careful about this stuff. The leadership of the British Army and the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force, the absolute top leadership of it is not military officers or naval officers. They're basically politicians, and they basically totally support the guy. There's no ifs or buts about most of it. If there are any who don't, they will be odd exceptions.
And it is I think we'd all agree our government is pretty tyrannical, but most tyrants know you've got to keep your military on side, because that's at the end of the day the real power, and ours are just too stupid to do that.
That's famous to happen with the February Revolution, where you even had the Cossacks just doing nothing when the Tsarist regime was overthrown, because basically there wasn't even good food supply for the Cossacks, who were the main enforcers. I mean, average Russian army soldier serving as a Petrograd garrison, they were locals. They're not going to fire on their own people. So that's just what happened. You just had a situation where the regime was just failing to feed its own soldiers properly in garrisons.
I watched something, Mitch, a while ago. I think it was an audio book about the Russian Revolution and the situation around Petrograd, and which of course is St. Petersburg these days. And, there were Russian Cossacks who were winking at the women and children in the crowds, saying, "No, we're not going to attack you." And you can understand why in that situation.
Yeah,
because why are they gonna use their swords and pistols and what have you against women and kids? I mean, they're not.
And the thing was, you have the police in Petrograd who they just got brutally slaughtered by the angry population.
And also, Mitch, if I'm correct, I'm not sure if I am, and you know way more about this than I do, but what I heard was that in Petrograd, the mounted police guys were sometimes also attacked by the Cossacks.
Yeah, that certainly happened in the 1905 revolution, where you had some elements of the army who sided with the revolutionaries, but the Cossacks brutally enforce Bashir's rule, whereas 1917 February, even McCoskins were just staying home in their barracks. Like, they were just like, we're not even getting good food, so why should we bother risking our necks?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, what that proves is there does come a point in a regime's life cycle where it can't survive anymore. And I don't know about you guys, but I think the British so-called elite regime is really starting to come to the end of its life cycle.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, violence is the supreme authority, and the only the enforcers of our regime, it's the Rainbow Police. It's a bunch of 4.5 foot women and stuff. They're not going to.
Yeah,
they're
really
not going to.
Scary. Really scary.
This isn't going to save you, Keir. You know.
Yeah, and you've got. You have I think like Morgoth often talks about rape gangs being like out Chernobyl. I mean, you got Lotus Eaters who were just saying, "Oh yeah, like Blairism's done. Like it's functionally dead because coming next election, probably just gonna have Farage come in." Now, on one hand, Farage doesn't want to bring as much change as we want him to, but perhaps but there's a chance to some degree, I suppose. But yeah, you're looking at the Labour government. They're just dead in the water, which is a zombie government at this point. After they couldn't even cut welfare because all they can do is up spending, and they're just raising taxes. There's nothing they can do. It's just a zombie government just waiting to get wiped out.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
friend of the channel actually, Chris Gard, a while back, a long time ago actually, when the whole Zero Seats campaign was going, someone was arguing with him about how like he couldn't possibly advocate for like Labour, and he said, well, the Tories are going to get destroyed because they've got no solutions to any of this. He said Labour haven't either. He said you could literally vote Labour in, put them in power, and they will just destroy themselves. And on one hand, some parts of the British state, you look at it and it looks more powerful than ever. You know, the security state, the police, everything else. But the political side of it just looks absolutely doomed. It just looks like it has no future ahead of it, any way it goes. And you can see this with like sorry.
So I was just going to say that, well, that's the thing, because when a regime is dying and crashing around, it is brittle and it will use force because it can't. It will always use persuasion first when things are going fine. When things are going wrong, that's when it starts breaking heads. But obviously, then its legitimacy starts to go into a death spiral, basically.
Yeah.
To me, the British government is, and the British elites at the moment, which includes, Nigerian Kemi Badenoch's so-called conservatives, and also probably Nigel Farage. These guys, they look paper thin to me at the moment, and as Alman said, they might bash heads as much as they can, but their ability to do that is strictly limited now.
I mean, but the thing is, it's like, I mean, it's a tough one to say because it's like police. I mean, the police as well have really gone downhill. Like, the police just like every police officer I've met in the last couple of years, which isn't many, all seem to just be like the kids that got bullied at school, right? And they're on a vendetta, and they're just so jumped up at everything all the time. On the other hand, and admittedly this is very limited, but I mean they're literally running recruitment ads for the police in like foreign languages, but they're not hiring too many people, admittedly. But yeah, they do seem to be very quickly trying to build up sort of a essentially a security force that is not going to be persuaded by the fact that the Bobbies is a member of the community you're sending them in to essentially oppress. So we could be looking down the barrel of something quite insidious.
I mean,
But
this is the old Roman tactic. They'd get people from different parts of the empire to police like people who want their own.
like famously, the the Emperor's Guard were all like from Germanic tribes and, and stuff like that. I remember, what's his name? Oh God, what's the guy that wrote On Power? The French guy.
Bertrand de Juvenal.
Yes, the Juvenal. Like he brings up the the point of like the Swiss Guard and like the Varangian Guard and stuff like that as well.
But like we're saying with our, all the lads in our army, you think they're going to take well to seeing foreign police officers start cracking heads of people? I don't think so.
Was a mail about one point policewoman like that they recruited from the Muslims that went hijab and I found her or something.
Yeah, I remember that. There was another thing I wanted to talk about this evening, and that's the "We Are the Shield" lot. If that's okay, just sort of get our opinions on this. So, for people who don't know, they popped up about a month ago. They call themselves "We Are the Shield," headed by this guy called Chris Hargreaves, who's a big, burly biker guy. Big beard, bald, tattoo on half his face. And I'll get into them in a bit. But they're so I'll read their public transparency document that they put out. So who are we? The Shield is a national initiative run by the Human Evolution Group, CIC, a lawful community-led movement designed to protect women and children from abuse and exploitation. We are not the police, nor are we vigilantes. We are structured, trained, and lawful. We exist to stand in the gap when the system falls short, to protect our most vulnerable and reassure our communities that someone is watching, someone cares, and someone will act lawfully when it matters most. We aim to become known as Britain's fifth emergency service, prevention. And then they go on to say about what they plan to do. So they want to have like uniformed guys doing patrols in high-risk areas like outside of schools and stuff, where sort of the grooming stuff is known to where they're sort of known to happen.
That'd be a good thing.
Yeah. And then you may see us attending scenes such as reports of suspicious activity in parks, late night transport safety protocols, known grooming hotspots, reports of predators near homes. They have female staff to deal with children. And then and they're going to have a hotline. So if you think someone's following you, can phone up and they'll send a team to go help get you back home. There they are. We assure you our entire operation is built to stay within UK law. All members sign a conduct agreement and undergo basic training. Our presence is non-confrontational. We observe, deter, and report. Monitor high-risk areas. Response team, they want to be on call 24/7.
Is any of this bad as far as you're saying?
Well, no, I think it's a good idea, and it's showing how weak the state is, as you always get when people are going to start thinking, okay, we've just got to do it ourselves then. And they say they're not a vigilante group, but
which I'm sure they're not. But
I do worry. I worry for them because I think the state are going to absolutely hate this.
Oh, yeah, that's possible, but that would be the state's problem and not theirs.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I'm no supporter of the state. Anyone who thinks I support the British state as it currently is insane, because I don't. I want the current British state to be totally destroyed. Totally destroyed. And I'm the most patriotic British guy you will ever meet in your life. I love England. I love Britain. I think it's the best country in the world with the best people in the world. But I want the British elites in 2025 to be totally and utterly destroyed and scattered to the four winds.
I do.
And I think
do
that's
think
every
that,
good Brit. Sorry, carry on, mate.
well, I was just going to say there are some like large neighbourhood watch organisations in places like Birmingham and that now, you know, in the whiter areas. It does seem to depend a lot on the local police force whether they allow that. Like up there, they seem to be okay with it. We tried to do something similar around here on a much smaller scale, and our local police force didn't say we couldn't do it, but they essentially tried to like kind of scare us off and imply that they wanted to see a full suite of like CIS licensing or whatever you call that, security licensing, which is not at all required to have a neighbourhood watch scheme. So yeah, it did surprise me that in some areas that they allow it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I assume with this one specifically, I mean, the authorities will hate that. Like,
Yeah, because they are. This group is specifically about protecting women and kids from the newcomers. That's the main goal. And the leader guy, he did an interview the other day. It was interesting. He's he's pretty rough past. Abused as a kid, and then he got into working security on bar doors and stuff as a bouncer, and all the drugs and stuff and all that sort of trouble that goes along with that. But he's currently he works as a shaman. That's his thing. And doing like self-help shamanism stuff. Not expecting that. And also, he's part of the 1% biker gang. And this Shield Dot, they do seem to be quite heavily drawing from the biker gangs. And
remember there being organisations that did something similar to this. They protected like abused children in America, and they were mostly all from like biker
I think
gang type things.
I think that's the Guardian Angels. I think drawn from like Hell's Angels and stuff. Yeah. But he seems like a nice guy, but I don't think he understands how our political system really, and how important this multiculturalism is to them. This is
fuck them and fuck the multiculturalism.
No, I agree, but I
know it's
think
important to them, but we have to destroy that.
I think he's underestimating the level of backlash he's going to get from the state.
Oh well, maybe from the government, but I don't know. I'll be honest, Thariam. I think the current British elites, including Tuti Care, who's obviously a gay man pretending to be married, and is Chancellor of the Exchequer, who bursts into tears at Prime Minister's question time. I look at these people, and they're not fully on top of anything. They're sitting on the top of a nation that despises them, and they know the nation despises them, and they're not fully in control. They have a paper thin amount of control at the moment, and as I'm not sure if it was you or somebody else pointed out earlier, they cannot depend on 4-foot 3-inch policewoman to save them for long. They really can't.
Yeah, I wonder
because they won't.
Yeah, that's another good example of because people. I think that Anthony Beaver talks about this a lot in his book about the Checker, who they used to hire loads of Chinese, because the thing was, a lot of guys in Czech were getting PTSD pretty much from like all the torture and stuff they were doing to the white Russian army officers. So they had to bring in loads of Chinese who just didn't really have any compunction about, and that's just kind of.
Yeah, the Chinese used to saw people in half through cages. So yeah, they wouldn't have had a problem with that.
Yeah, and it's also like, I think like the Chinese had a bit of a chip on their shoulder regarding like the Russian Empire taking over the area of what we call now Vladivostok, because they used to be part of the Qing Empire. In the same way that the police are hiring loads of like Pakistanis who got a chip on their shoulder against us. So you just, and it's like my local shopping centre, for example, ever since the Boris wave came in, I've noticed a lot more brown security guards, and like supermarkets near me are higher.
Yeah, they all are, right? It's weird.
Yeah, I haven't seen a white security guard in any shop around here in a long time.
Yeah,
there's one where there's, I think the Sainsbury's are all guarded by Gurkhas, which I think is a bit funny. But I mean, I am, down here we had a big Gurkha base, so they live here. But all the others are all like Boris Wave blacks.
The Gurkhas are the only ones I trust, to be honest. But all right.
Well, apparently they do a lot of the security training in prisons. So like, there's probably a good chance that a few of them are sort of previous offenders.
I very much doubt many of the Gurkhas will be prison.
No, but for the others.
Oh, the others.
Because we also see, because the Gurkhas do all of that sort of security type jobs down here anyway. Like we get a lot of Gurkha G4S drivers filling up the cash machines and stuff.
Yeah, those guys would be all right. I would trust those guys. I mean, I was a British soldier, so you're not going to say a bad word about the Gurkhas to me because they were always great. But the rest of them, yeah. I mean, I have to say, I'm not like the Chinese. I couldn't do like the Chinese in the as Mitch was saying, the Chinese would like saw you in half slowly because the Chinese can do shit like that. I can't do that. I'm much too weak. I just use a machine gun and kill them. But that's just me.
Yeah, that's the thing of revolution. Like you just notice that along the lines of like communists or shit libs. They love to use like foreigners who have a massive chip on their shoulder. Like that's.
But but I mean, yeah. Look, and you see it in those parts of England that have very high Muslim, particularly Pakistani populations. There's a lot of Pakistani cops.
Yeah, I don't know if you've noticed. I don't know if you've noticed on Twitter. There's a lot more disappearances of like young teenage girls. Like,
well, are Pakistani cops going to investigate that? Of course, they're not.
But they're probably involved in it themselves.
The vast majority of them, I mean, maybe one or two might, but I doubt many of them would.
I saw a 14-year-old girl gone missing in Bradford. White girl, of course. No chance. No chance.
Only a white slut. According to the Pakistanis, only a white slut.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah, I remember when I was I would have been 16 or 17 at the time, and the thing was, we had like a girl in our school. She came from Birmingham. She says, she came from Aston. And whenever you asked her, like, if you like mention, let's say, I don't know, the demographics, like she'll just clam up, like she'll just, it's like, you could just tell. She probably knew she would probably live in hell. Just like dealing with all the diversity when Matt Nakamura, it's like, yeah. Like that's the thing, like people. It's like you get certain people that all of us know of who call themselves right wing who say, "Oh well, people won't support deporting loads of these people because they're our neighbours," and they go, "The few Brits I know who have to live with the diversity, they're just like wanting it gone."
I'd support all of those people being deployed. I wouldn't care if they were young blokes or they were young women or young girls or babies. I would support all of them being deployed. Listen, I wouldn't kill them, not at all. I wouldn't be cruel to them. I wouldn't be
But,
cruel to them at all, but I would absolutely send them home. That's
Right,
all
but
I
the thing
do.
is
Just
that,
put them on an aeroplane, send them home.
in London, I think half of all, I think in London it's half of white adults are Reform voters, which is, you know, and I mean, admittedly, Reform is not going to be winning big in London anytime soon, just because of the
No.
demographics. But yeah, it's just kind of ironic that the people that have to live close to this stuff don't feel the way that the advocates claim.
I don't know if you saw some of the Reform branch heads in London where I got that Raj Forhad over in Ilford.
Yeah.
Bangladeshi.
What reform? What reform? Yeah.
Yeah, Bangladeshi.
That's the thing, though. None of those people that are voting Reform are even looking at who you know represents the party. I mean, even round here, like half of our Reform people that are running are Indian, but like, no one even knows their names. Like with it, even people in the party, no one knows who they are. It's just, oh, you know, it's Reform, isn't it? Reform. Yeah, it's Farage.
But do you think when it comes down to
Meaningless.
voting, though, like they'll see like Reform, but it's some Indian name, and they'll just go, "Oh no." That the sort of the people who don't follow stuff really.
Yeah, it's like I remember like there were plenty of like these like rhinos over in America, like the fake conservatives who were like they were all crying because they were like these white American boomers over in Ohio or something like that, where they were saying we're not going to vote for a guy literally called Vivek.
Yeah, in the recent council stuff, the Lib Dems were the only ones to run a non-English candidate in my area. So Indian name, of course, they came dead last. Even a like below some real like nutters, like independent nutter guys. Just nobody seemed to want the Indian.
Guys, all I would say is, you know, Nigel Farage seems, and maybe I'm wrong, but he seems to want to be a kind of Margaret Thatcher 2.0, right? And a Mark II Mrs. Thatcher would no more save Britain today than she did in the 1980s. And because I'm an old bastard, I remember the 1980s. And so when you look at Mrs. Thatcher, and don't get me wrong, she did have one or two good points. But when you look at what she actually did, she was like one of the main engines that destroyed British industry. She was, because she opened it up to everybody in the whole world. And, you know, the opposite to what Trump is doing with his tariffs. Mrs. Thatcher,
in America,
hang on, let me finish, please, sorry, and then
I think as it's going to go, but
she destroyed a lot of British industry. She really did. She was also going to make really big defense cuts, including to the Royal Navy, prior to the 1982 Falklands War, right? And they were cancelled as a result of the Falklands War, but that's what she was originally going to do. She was conned by the European Union, as it then was, for a very long time. Way too long, actually. I mean, I don't really get it, all right? Mrs. Thatcher was the British Prime Minister who really finished fucking over Rhodesia, right? Which was the most pro-British, always sent soldiers to fight for Britain place in Southern Africa. She finished fucking those guys over. And finally, she gave up Hong Kong, and only the new territories were released. The rest of Hong Kong was actually British forever. She gave that up with barely a whimper. So a Mark II Mrs. Thatcher today would not save Britain, because she didn't save Britain in the 1980s, you know? But yeah, guys, you may discuss this. To me, it's like Nigel Farage is much more close to a Mark II Mrs. Thatcher than anything else. And that is not going to save our country. It's not enough. It's nowhere near strong enough. And it's looking at the wrong things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say, of course, at the same time in America, they had Reagan, who was doing the same stuff, you know, sending it all abroad, all America's industry. But yeah, like, Nigel said the other day, he is the last chance to save the system, and that we won't like what comes after him. But we don't like the system. We don't want it saved. So
yeah, the death to neoliberalism.
Totally agree. And I want death to neoliberalism, basically. That's what I want. You've got
He did say this as well years ago. He said the same thing quite a long time ago on Question Time. It's been a continuing theme for him. He brings it up. He brings it up quite often.
Yeah, he wants to save our current system, and I don't know about you, Alan, but I don't. I want it destroyed.
I mean, you could maybe look at it like, I think Richard Tice is quite an honest look at this, because for a lot of people of like his generation, they got a lot of wealth out of it. They did well out of it. And from the short-term sort of things, they didn't care about the long-term consequences that we are now dealing with. And Nigel's probably much like Tice. It's like, well, I'll be dead soon, so what do I care? Just wants to, just keep it going until he's dead, and then, sod all of you.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Mitch, what do you think about this stuff? I mean, I just think the more I see of Farage and reform, in particular with the enormous power that Youssef seems to have for a mere 200,000 quid, don't get it, mate. It doesn't make any sense to me. 200,000 quid in British national political terms is peanuts.
Reform will be bringing in so much more these days than that. So
why does this Muslim Sri Lankan guy, right, who has a very dubious history, by the way, why is he so important to reform that he can make a public statement on Twitter, on X, saying supporting reform as the next government of the British is now a waste of my time? But unlike really good people like really good people like Rupert Lowe, Nigel Farage will just take him back as if he'd never done anything wrong.
And it's weird because Nigel has a really big ego. Like, he doesn't take any sort of slight lightly normally.
Yeah.
So why?
Exactly.
But apparently he was really upset about this. It's weird. Very out of character for him. I mean, I mean, we all know the allegations that of what Jeffrey Epstein was doing with stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Based on nothing other than my gut. It sounds like Zai Yusuf's Velocity Black, where they sort of seem to like put on fancy parties and fly out models and stuff. Similar sort of thing to, I imagine that Jeffrey was doing at his parties.
Interesting.
And I just wonder if, and we know Nigel knew Zaya beforehand. I don't know.
That's interesting.
Don't want to insinuate anything.
But that's interesting. Yeah, no. I mean, I just can't work out why this Sri Lankan Muslim who only gave reform 200,000 quid, which, whilst that's a lot of money to all of us guys, in terms of a national British political party,
and it wasn't
not a lot of money.
And it wasn't just the position. He became like 50% joint owner of Reform.
Well, yeah,
like the shares. So yeah,
very strange to me. Like, I'll be honest, I don't any longer trust Farage at all. I certainly don't trust Zia Youssef, and I regard Zia Youssef as my enemy. If you don't, then I would suggest you're a bit foolish. If you're a Anglo-Celtic British guy,
that's the other
woman.
thing. That recently came up. So this week, Zia Youssef's been banging on about this one council house that's refusing to take down. One old woman is saying, "No, I'm not taking down this pride flag," and and he's sort of going, "Oh, this is disgrace and stuff." It just looks so pathetic to me. You're saying you're going to save the country, turn everything around, and yet one old woman is stopping you from just taking down a flag. What hope do you have?
Listen, I don't care either way about Zia Youssef or the old woman with the pride flag, but yeah, I see what you're saying. I do see what you're saying. Guys, any final thoughts? And I'm just going to go around in a clockwise manner. So, Hitman, any final thoughts?
Well, Restore Britain looks promising, and all we'll have to do is keep our eyes peeled and see how things develop, but hopefully they'll move in a positive direction.
Yeah, it would be nice. Therium, final thoughts?
Yeah, I like you, I think I'll be joining. The Cromwell Club, I've got the savings, but I don't know if I want to spend that much on them just yet. We'll see.
2,500 sounds a bit much at the moment, I'm going to say. But
I could maybe if I could if I was thinking trying to angle myself into some sort of position, it's obviously a good way to do it.
That's probably the way to become an MP in due course.
Yeah. Not yet.
Adamant.
No, nothing really from me. I mean, I think people should join. People should get involved. I think it's kind of implied that even with the basic membership, there'll be sort of events and stuff like that. So there'll be more opportunities than just a vote form and as such. It'll be an interesting project, I think, to be a part of. And yeah, I would also like to try and possibly look at joining the Cromwell Club in the future, but it is a lot of money, so I'd have to think quite hard about it. I mean, I've got high hopes, surprisingly high hopes. But yeah, we'll see.
Pretty much agree with you on that. Mitch, what do you think?
I mean, I might join Restore Britain by the time it hits up Monday, I imagine. But although I don't think I'll be paying for the Cromwell Club anytime soon. I mean, even it's like I remember saying like a while ago. If I was in the English Civil War, I'd be on Parliament's side, and that's what that Civil War quiz that some people take here and there. It says I'd be a Roundhead more than a Cavalier, but
really. These days?
You put me down as a moderate Roundhead, so it's not like full on Cromwell, but
I'd be a Cavalier, but not because I particularly like King Charles I, just because traditional.
Imagine Civil War 2.0. Parliament trying to rally an army these days.
These days it would be totally different. Yeah. Okay,
yeah, you just have Bradford, just summoning a big time army.
Yeah.
So I know why I probably would. I think Carl said it on that chat he had with Dave Green about it. Like, if there was a civil war right now, imagine Parliament just calling up the entire Muslim minority to arms.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just imagine the British Army crushing them these days.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The king is the commander in chief. But do you know what? I'm not sure that would happen. That's the scary thing. But whatever. because of British generals who look like 40-year-old thots rather than British generals. Guys, Hitman, what would you like to plug, sir?
Well, on my channel, I've been doing a series on modern Iran with my good friend Hunger the Dye Merchant. The next episode of that is going to be in 2 weeks' time on the 19th of July. We're going to be talking about the Russo-Persian Wars and the rise of the Moshtahad. So if you're interested, to give that a watch. Also on my sort of bi-weekly show I do called the Archival Discourses, I've been having a few American millennial friends on and been talking about how cursed millennial culture has been, and we've been delving into some rather dark nostalgia. So if you find that interesting, give that a watch as well. I've actually had a lot of rave feedback for that. So
seen some of those. Hitman has a good channel. Go and check him out. Tharium, anything you want to plug, mate?
Nope.
Mitch, anything you want to plug?
Not on me at the moment.
Alaman, anything you would like to plug?
No, nothing from me.
All right, guys.
One little thing I've been doing, just as a bit of fun, is the Tory MP Chris Philp. He's the one who did the video of the gypsy camp the other day. He's just got a really strong Anglo-Saxon face. So on Twitter, I'm trying to radicalize him. I keep sending him Saxon stuff, going, "Your ancestors are watching. you know what must be done. Pick up your sword." I just send him this, sending something like that most days. Just trying to awaken that Anglo-Saxon spirit that's clearly in him. But
let's hope. We are going to be back on Wednesday with part 2 of our Crimean War stream. And I think we're actually going to start the war on this one. We didn't actually start the Crimean
sorry for
War.
laughing, but that's just funny.
Yeah, it's true. Hitman, I'd love you to join, because you might be able to give us some information on the Turks, for example. But yeah, we did a Crimean War stream last Wednesday, and we talked about all sorts of stuff that led up to it, including the rows between the Orthodox monks and the Roman Catholic monks in Jerusalem, and the Brits keeping the Russian Navy out of the Mediterranean and all sorts of other things. But we didn't actually start the war. So this week, I suspect we'll actually at least start the war, and we'll see if we finish it. But yeah, Hitman, you're more than welcome to join, mate, because you'd probably be able to give us some ideas on the Turks, for example. But anyway, yeah, so come and join us for that, guys. I'm going to try and play us out for tune. Let's see if it happens. There we go.
When British cars as of the wild did you renown obtain, and bravely proved their favored isle, still mistress of the main. Triumphant shall our navy navies plough the seas from shore to shore. And France in future times know how to conquer as before. To conquer as before. And France in future times know how to conquer, to conquer, to conquer as before. Emerging from his bed on rocks, old Neptune eager arose, then sternly shook his briny locks to view the mighty foes. Italia, cried the frowning god, detested be their cause, who ruled the world with iron rod and break through freedom's laws. His foaming billows soon shall flow, be stained with purple gore. And Frenchmen to their cost know how to conquer as before. To conquer as before. And Frenchmen to their cost know how to conquer, to conquer, to conquer as before. This dread decree, resolved with labor and might, to win the empire of the sea, or perish in the fight. Tremendous then the battle raged, the waves seemed on fire, and dauntless ship with ship engaged, while fame did each inspire. Some struck, while others, moving slow, to gain their native shore, proclaim that British stars know how to conquer as before, to conquer as before. Proclaim that British stars know how to conquer, to conquer, to conquer as before.
Okay, that was from a friend of the channel, a member of my Discord, Patriotic Archive, and it was, of course, the glorious 1st of June about the Royal Navy's great victory over the French Navy in 1794. I would strongly suggest to anyone who is a British patriot, look up the history of the Royal Navy from Queen Elizabeth I's time, with the Spanish Armada, right up to the Falklands War in 1982. And the Royal Navy is probably the single most successful military and naval force there's ever been in the world. They very, very seldom lost, including, as I say, right up to the 1982 Falklands War. Thank you very much to my guest, Atman. who has already gone because he's tired. And I understand that. He's a working man. Thank you very much to Hitman, to Tharium, and to Mitch. Links will be below later on, including to Rupert Lowe's Restore Britain. Yeah, I thought this was a pretty interesting stream. I think Rupert Lowe's Restore Britain might do good things. I'm certainly going to join it. I think probably some of the other guys on the stream will. And we will return on Wednesday with our part 2 of the Crimean War stream. And in the meantime, don't let the bastards grind you down.